The rain had been coming down since noon, the kind that soaks through a jacket in under a minute and turns every concrete surface into a mirror. It was a Tuesday in March, and I was running 20 minutes late picking up my daughter from her after-school program because a van on the highway had shed a tire and the traffic had gone completely still for 40 minutes. By the time I pulled off the exit, the rain was loud against the roof of the truck, and the wipers were working as hard as they could and still losing. That was when I saw her. She was standing at the corner of Maple and 6th, outside a closed flower shop, pressed back under the narrow overhang to stay out of the worst of it. She was maybe 7 years old, wearing a white dress with little blue flowers on it and leather shoes that were already dark with water. She was not crying loudly. She was doing something harder than that, holding herself completely still with both arms folded around her stomach and her chin tucked down, crying the way children cry when they have been alone long enough that crying out loud stopped feeling useful. A pink backpack sat on the wet ground beside her feet. Nobody was coming. I pulled over. I left the engine running and the hazards on, and I got out. The rain hit me all at once, the way it does when you have been dry and suddenly are not. I crossed the sidewalk and crouched down a few feet from her, so I was at her height, and I did not move toward her. "Hey," I said. "You okay?" She looked at me the way children look at strangers, assessing first, deciding second. Her eyes were very dark and very serious and red at the edges from the crying. "I can't find my house," she said. Her voice was steadier than I expected. I could tell she had been working to keep it that way. "How long have you been out here?" She thought about it honestly. "A long time." I looked both ways down the street. No cars slowing, no adults on foot, nothing. The rain came harder. "My name is Rafael," I said. "I have a daughter. She's 6. Her name is Mia." The girl looked at me for another second. Then she said, "My name is Lily." I picked up her backpack from the wet ground and held it out to her. She took it and held it against her chest. "Do you want to sit in the truck out of the rain while we figure out where your house is? My daughter's waiting for me, but she's safe and warm, and we can call your mom or your dad." She looked at the truck. She looked at the rain. She looked at me. "Okay," she said. I did not take her hand. I walked slightly ahead and opened the passenger door, and she climbed in herself, and I went around to the driver's side. She sat with the backpack in her lap and looked through the windshield at the wet street. "Do you know your address?" I asked. She shook her head. "But our street has a big tree at the end of it that got hit by lightning, and the top part is broken off." "I know that tree," I said, because I did. "It was on Cordova, 4 blocks east." We drove. She sat quietly and watched through the window with the same focused attention my daughter Mia had when she was looking for something she expected to recognize. I turned on to Cordova, and she sat forward. "There," she said. "The 3rd house." It was a large house, modern lines, a black front door. The lights inside were on. I pulled to the curb, and she was already reaching for the door handle. "Wait," I said. "I'll walk you up." "You don't have to." "I know," I said. "I want to." We walked up the path together. She rang the bell herself. We waited. The woman who opened the door was not what I expected, which I will admit is a thing I have had to examine in myself since then. The small assumptions a person carries without knowing they are carrying them. She was in her late 30s, sharp-featured, hair pulled back, wearing a blazer over dress pants as though she had just come from somewhere formal. She was on the phone. She held up one finger to us, the way you hold up a finger when you are in the middle of something important. Lily stepped inside past her without ceremony and went directly to the stairs and disappeared. The woman said 2 more sentences into the phone, something about a 7 a.m. call and a deck that needed revising, and then she ended it and looked at me. "Yes, I found your daughter at Maple and 6th. She'd been standing in the rain for a while." She looked at the stairs where Lily had gone, then back at me. She took the bus home alone. I told her to wait at school if I was late. It was still raining behind me. I was standing on her front step with water coming off my jacket onto the doormat. "She's fine," I said, "just wet and a little shaken." The woman looked at me, then really looked the kind of look that takes an inventory. My jacket, which was old and had a rip at the left pocket that I kept meaning to fix. My truck at the curb, which was a 2007 and showed it. My hands, which were rough because I worked with them. She said, and her tone had shifted slightly, gone from distracted to something more measured, almost careful. "Are you expecting something?" "I am sorry." For bringing her home. Are you expecting something for it? I stood there a moment in the rain. No, I said. She held my eyes for another second. Then she said, all right, thank you, and she closed the door. I walked back to the truck. I sat for a moment with both hands on the wheel and the rain loud on the roof. I was not angry exactly. I was something more like tired, the particular tiredness that comes from a thing you cannot name until much later. I drove to pick up Mia. If you're enjoying this story so far, don't forget to hit the like button and subscribe. Drop a comment telling me where in the world you're watching from. I love hearing from you. My name is Rafael Mendoza. I am 39 years old. I have been a single father for 4 years, since the spring that Camila left, which is a longer story than this one and not the one I am telling. Mia was 2 when it happened. She does not remember a time before it was just the 2 of us, which I think is both a mercy and a kind of sadness I have decided not to look at too directly. I work as a maintenance supervisor for a residential property management company. It means I carry a set of keys and a radio, and I drive a circuit of 8 buildings across the east side of the city, and I fix what is broken, and I manage the 3 men who work under me, and I make sure the properties are safe and clean and functioning. It is not glamorous work. My hands show it. My truck shows it. I am good at it in the way that a person is good at something they have been doing carefully for long enough that the care becomes invisible even to themselves. My father was an electrician. His father was a carpenter. There is a lineage in my family of men who understood things through their hands, who could look at a structure and feel where the failure would come from before it arrived. I grew up in that tradition without fully understanding that it was a tradition until I was already shaped by it. Before the maintenance work, before Mia, before Camila leaving, I had a different kind of life. I had a degree in structural engineering from UT Austin. I spent 6 years working for a firm called Harlan Associates, which did commercial and municipal infrastructure, bridges, overpasses, the bones of things that hold other things up. I was 31 when I left. The reasons were multiple and compounding and are also not entirely the story I am telling now, except to say that when you have a 2-year-old in a marriage that is ending and a job that requires 60-hour weeks and travel, something gives. I let the career give. I did not regret it. I regret other parts of that year, but not that part. What I kept was the way of seeing. I still walk into any structure and read it the way my father taught me to read a circuit. I still know, without needing to measure, when something is wrong in a wall or a foundation or a load-bearing joint. The people at the properties call me when something is beyond the usual fixing because they have learned that I will find the thing that is actually wrong rather than the thing that appears to be wrong. And those two things are not always the same. Mia is 6 years old and has my mother's eyes and a habit of narrating her own thoughts out loud while she draws, which means that the apartment in the evenings has a constant low-level commentary running in the background like a radio left on in another room. She draws horses mostly. She has never ridden one. She draws them with complete confidence anyway, the way children do things they have never been taught, out of some internal conviction that the knowledge is already there. She was finishing a horse when I came through the door that Tuesday evening, still wet from the rain, her backpack on the kitchen table, and her shoes off, and her socks damp. "You're wet," she said without looking up. There was traffic. She looked up then. Her expression said she had more questions, but was deciding their priority order. "Who was the girl?" she asked. I set my keys down. "How do you know about a girl? You smell like outside rain, and also like someone else's jacket." I washed my hands at the sink. She was lost. I gave her a ride home. Mia considered this. Was she scared? A little. But she was brave? She was pretty brave, I said. Mia returned to the horse. "Good," she said, as though this settled something she had been waiting to hear. We ate dinner. I made rice and chicken because those are the 2 things I have made well for 4 years, and Mia trusts them. She told me about something that happened at school involving a disagreement over whose turn it was to hold the class frog, which had apparently escalated to a level requiring teacher intervention. I listened. After dinner, she had her bath, and I read to her 2 chapters of a book about a girl who discovers that her grandmother is secretly a retired spy, and then she was asleep with the light still on in the hall the way she needed it. I sat at the kitchen table with a glass of water and did not think about the woman at the black door on Cordova Street. Or I tried not to. The thing she had said stayed with the bluntness of it. "Are you expecting something?" as though the only reason a man who looked like me, in a truck like mine, would bring a child home to rain was if there was something in it for him. I have spent enough years in this life to know that the assumption said more about her than it did about me. That did not make it settle any easier. I turned off the kitchen light and went to bed. Her name was Noelle Varga. I did not know that yet on Tuesday. I would learn it 3 days later when she called the property management office. Noelle Varga was 37 years old and had been the CEO of a company called Meridian Capital Partners for 2 years. Meridian was a mid-sized private equity firm with 41 employees and a portfolio of 11 companies across logistics, healthcare administration, and commercial real estate. She had not built it from nothing. She had been brought in to turn around a firm that had been underperforming for 3 consecutive years under its previous leadership. She had done that. Revenue was up 22% in her first year and 18% in her second. The investors who had hired her were satisfied. The employees who had been there before her arrival were, depending on who you asked, either galvanized or exhausted. Sometimes both. She had grown up the daughter of a Hungarian immigrant father who had built a small import business from 40 square feet of warehouse space and 20 years of work, and a mother who had taught high school mathematics in a suburb of Cleveland. She had watched her father lose the business when she was 15, a perfect storm of a bad contract and a dishonest partner, and a bank that called its loan at the wrong moment. She had watched him rebuild from nothing at 51 years old with the same patience and without complaint. Something about that had lodged in her. She was not unkind. This is the thing I want to say clearly, because it would be easier to tell this story if she were simply unkind. She was not. She was someone who had decided, somewhere in the years of building what she had built, that the most efficient path through the world was to establish early and clearly who had standing in any given situation and to operate from that assessment. It was not malice. It was a system. Systems are harder to argue with than malice. Lily was her daughter, and she was 7 years old, and she had her mother's dark eyes and her father's stubbornness. And her father had been gone since she was 4, a circumstance that Noelle did not discuss with most people, and that Lily had adapted to with the practical resilience of a child who had never been given much choice in the matter. The au pair, a young woman named Kate, had called in sick that Tuesday. Noelle had an investor presentation that could not move. She had called the school and told them Lily was to take the bus and walk the 4 blocks from the stop. Lily had taken the bus and gotten off at the wrong stop because she had fallen asleep and the driver had not noticed, and the stop she woke up at was unfamiliar, and by the time she walked 2 blocks, trying to recognize something, she was already lost and the rain was already starting. None of this I knew on Tuesday evening. I knew the rain and the pink backpack and the child holding herself still against the flower shop wall and the door that closed before the water fully dried from my jacket. What I knew was small. What was true was larger. That is almost always how it goes. She called on Thursday morning at 9:14. I was on the 3rd floor of the Ashwood building checking a water pressure issue in apartment 312 when my radio crackled and the dispatcher told me I had a call routed through the main office. I came down and took it to the front desk. "This is Noelle Varga," she said. "You brought my daughter home Tuesday." "Yes," I said. "I want to apologize for what I said when you came to the door." She said it cleanly, without preamble, the way someone says a thing they have decided to say rather than a thing they feel. I registered the difference. I did not hold it against her. Deciding to apologize when you do not feel like it is its own kind of discipline. "You don't need to," I said. "I do. It was rude, and it was wrong, and Lily told me this morning that you were very kind to her. I wanted you to know that I know that." A short pause. "How did you find this number?" "You left a business card," she said, "in her backpack." I had not remembered doing that. I do it out of habit when I drop someone somewhere, a holdover from years of project work where you always left contact information. I had not thought about it. "Your daughter was brave," I said. "She held herself together in a situation that would have rattled most kids." Another pause, longer this time. "Yes," she said, and her voice had shifted slightly, something less controlled in it. "She is." That was where it could have ended. A clean, closed loop. The apology made, received, the story finished before it began. Instead, she said, "I'd like to do something, if you're willing, as a thank you." I told her that wasn't necessary. "Lunch," she said, "for you and your daughter." There's a place on Marquette Street with good food, and it's quiet enough that kids don't feel out of place. Saturday at noon, if you're free. Lily would like to see her. She asked about her this morning. She hasn't met her, I said. She knows she exists. She asked if your daughter was okay. She wanted to know her name. I thought about Mia at the kitchen table asking if the girl had been brave. Something about that symmetry felt less like coincidence and more like the specific logic of children, who are always conducting parallel investigations into the same questions adults think they have already answered. All right, I said. Saturday at noon. The restaurant was called Carta, narrow and brick-walled with paper menus and small vases on each table that held a single stem of something green. Noelle was already there when we arrived, seated at a corner table with Lily beside her. Lily was wearing a yellow dress and had a small notebook open on the table in front of her. She looked up when Mia walked in, and the two of them conducted a brief, serious mutual assessment the way children do before they decide whether to be friends, and then Mia sat down and pointed at the notebook and said, "What are you drawing?" And that was that. Noelle watched them. Something in her face changed when she watched Lily, went softer in a way the rest of her expressions did not. "Thank you for coming," she said to me. "Thank you for the invitation." We ordered. The girls ate and talked in the parallel, overlapping way of children who have just met and are in the process of determining what they have in common, which in their case turn out to be horses and a mutual suspicion of mushrooms and a shared opinion that the school day was too long. Noelle, and I talked more carefully. She asked what I did, and I told her property maintenance, and she nodded without the slight recalibration I sometimes saw in people when I said it. She asked how long. I told her 4 years in this role, before that engineering. She glanced at me. What kind? Structural. Commercial mostly. Some municipal. She picked up her water glass. What was the shift? I nodded toward Mia. She looked at my daughter. She did not ask anything else about it. We talked about other things. The city's new building code amendments that were creating headaches for property managers across the east side. A school bond measure that was on the upcoming ballot. The conversation moved without effort, which I noticed because effort is usually what those conversations take. At the end of lunch, Lily gave Mia a page torn from the notebook, a drawing she had made during the meal. I looked at it as we walked to the car. It was a figure with dark hair holding the hand of a smaller figure with curly hair, standing in rain with what appeared to be a large sun directly overhead despite the rain, which seemed to me like exactly the right artistic decision. Mia held it with both hands the whole drive home. She folded it very carefully and put it on her nightstand that night. I did not hear from Noelle for 11 days. I was not expecting to. The lunch had been a completed gesture, a courtesy extended and received, and I had no reason to assume it was the beginning of anything. Then on a Wednesday evening, my phone showed her name. She said she was sorry to call out of nowhere, but she had a situation and she thought I might know something about it. The building Meridian leased for their offices was a 9-story structure on Callahan Street, built in 1987, and the property manager had been telling her for 6 weeks that a persistent cracking pattern in the east stairwell wall was cosmetic, normal settling, nothing to worry about. Her instinct said otherwise, and she had not been able to get a straight answer from anyone she had spoken to so far. I asked her to send me photos. She sent 12 of them, taken from different angles and elevations. I looked at them at the kitchen table while Mia drew horses across the room. The pattern was not random. It followed a diagonal line from the second floor landing to the third that was consistent with differential settlement, meaning the east foundation corner was moving at a different rate than the rest of the structure. Whether that was active or historical was a question the photos could not answer. But the property manager's cosmetic assessment was wrong. "This isn't cosmetic," I said when I called her back. "The pattern is load-related. You need an independent structural assessment before anyone tells you not to worry about it." She was quiet for a moment. "That's what I thought. Who have you been talking to?" "Only the property manager and the building's general contractor." Both gave me the same answer. "They're incentivized for the same answer," I said. "Get someone with no stake in the building." "Can you recommend someone?" I gave her 2 names, both engineers I had worked alongside at Harlan Associates, both careful and honest. I told her to mention my name if she called either of them. She thanked me. She said she would. She called back the following Monday. The engineer she had reached, a woman named Dr. Priya Iyer, had gone out Thursday afternoon, spent 2 hours in the building, and confirmed differential settlement in the northeast foundation corner. Active, not historical. The east stairwell was to be closed pending remediation. The property manager, she said, is now very interested in resolving this quickly. I imagine he is. Dr. Iyer said the same thing you did. She said whoever looked at those photos first knew what they were looking at. I've been reading structures for a long time, I said. Another pause. Would you be willing to look at something else? That was how it started. Not dramatically. Not with a moment anyone would have written down. Over the next 3 weeks, she sent me 4 more situations. A loading dock assessment at one of Meridian's portfolio companies where repeated equipment failure was being attributed to the machinery rather than the floor substrate. A parking structure expansion proposal for a commercial property they were considering acquiring, the drawings for which had a cantilever calculation I could see was undersized without running the full numbers. A historic building downtown that a developer was pitching to them for conversion, which had a gorgeous facade and a timber frame interior that she needed to understand before committing to the numbers. I looked at each one. I wrote her short assessments, factual, no more than what was needed. She responded with specific questions. I answered them. She did not treat the answers as suggestions. She treated them as information to be weighed alongside everything else she knew, which I respected. During this time, I saw her twice in person. Once when she brought Lily to the park on a Saturday afternoon and sent me a message that they were there if Mia wanted to come, which she did, emphatically. Once for coffee on a Tuesday morning before she had a board meeting, which was her suggestion and which lasted 40 minutes longer than she had scheduled for. She was not easy company in the way some people are easy, warm immediately, open by default. She was easy in a different way, the way of someone who is very direct about what they think and does not require you to perform anything in return. I found I could say a thing once and not need to support it with social scaffolding. It was rare enough that I noticed it. Lily and Mia had, by the 3rd Saturday, established what Mia called an official friendship, the terms of which apparently included weekly drawings exchanged by photograph and a shared project involving the invention of a horse with wings whose name they were still negotiating. I watched the 2 of them from across the park and felt the particular feeling that comes when something you did not expect arrives in your life quietly and then simply stays. On the 4th week, Noelle asked me to come to the Callahan building to walk the remediation work with her and Dr. Iyer. The contractor was presenting the repair plan, and she wanted a second set of eyes on the proposed methodology. I said yes. I wore my work clothes because I was coming from a job. I signed in at the lobby as a guest and rode the elevator to the 6th floor, where the meeting was being held in a glass-walled conference room with a view of the northeast corner of the building. There were 7 people in the room. Noelle, Dr. Iyer, the property manager whose name was Gareth Sloan, the general contractor and 2 members of his team, and a man named Philip Marsh who was introduced as Meridian's head of asset management. Gareth Sloan looked at me when I came in, and then at my clothes, and then at Noelle. He said nothing, but the look covered quite a lot. The contractor began his presentation. He proposed a mudjacking approach for the foundation corner, a standard enough method for minor differential settlement. I listened. On slide 4, he showed the injection point locations, and I stopped looking at the slides and started looking at the building drawings on the side table. There was a utilities conduit running directly through his proposed primary injection zone. It was not on his drawing because it was not on the property's current plans, but it was on the original 1987 construction documents, which I had pulled the previous evening when Noelle told me the building's construction year, because that is the kind of thing you do when someone you respect is making a decision that costs real money. I waited until he finished. Then I said, the primary injection point on the east side goes through a utilities conduit that isn't on your current drawings. It's in the original documentation from build. If you inject there, you risk the conduit. The room went quiet. The contractor looked at his drawings, then at me. We pulled current plans from the property manager, he said. The current plans don't show it, I said. The 1987 originals do. Page 41 of the structural package, detail D7. Gareth Sloan said, and his voice had an edge to it that he was working to keep casual. Who exactly are you? Noelle looked at him. He's the reason you're having this conversation instead of much more expensive one 6 months from now. Sloan looked at her, then at me. The edge did not leave his voice, but it shifted, became less certain. Dr. Iyer was already on her phone. She looked up after a moment. He's right, she said. I have the original documents. Page 41, detail D7. 18-inch utilities conduit, northeast quadrant. The room recalibrated. The contractor asked for the document reference. I gave it. He made a note. He said the injection point could be relocated 2 feet south without significant impact on the remediation effectiveness, but he would need to re-verify the load transfer path. That works, I said, if you verify the secondary bearing capacity at the adjusted point. The soil report from the original build showed variable compaction in that area. Worth a fresh bore before you commit. He looked at me for a moment. Then he nodded and made another note. The meeting continued. Sloan did not speak directly to me again. After it ended and the contractor's team was packing up, Dr. Iyer crossed the room and shook my hand. Structural background? She asked. Harlan Associates, I said. 6 years. She nodded slowly. I thought so. The way you read the original documents. Old habit. She looked at me for a moment. Are you consulting now? Maintenance supervisor, I said. She studied my face as though she was deciding whether to say the next thing. Then she said, that seems like a significant underutilization of a particular set of skills. I picked up my jacket from the back of the chair. My daughter gets home at 3:15, I said. The hours work. She seemed to accept this. She gave me her card anyway. On the way down in the elevator, Noelle stood beside me and did not say anything for the first 2 floors. Then she said, you pulled the 1987 documents last night. The building's from 87, I said. That's when the original infrastructure went in. She looked straight ahead at the elevator doors. You did that before you knew if it would matter. Yes. She was quiet again. The doors opened, and we walked out into the lobby and through the glass front and onto Callahan Street where the afternoon light was coming in flat and cold from the west. She stopped on the sidewalk. I stopped beside her. I misjudged you, she said. She said it the way she had said the first apology, cleanly, directly, without softening it into something easier. From the beginning. I want you to know I know that. I looked at her. The afternoon light was in her eyes, and she did not look away from it. You had the information you had, I said. That's generous. It's accurate. She almost smiled. It did not quite arrive. Can I ask you something? She said. Yes. Why didn't you tell me any of it? The degree, Harlan Associates, any of it. You've been helping me for a month. I thought about the question, about the honest answer, which was not complicated. Because you needed the information, I said, not the credentials. The information was either right or it wasn't. The credentials don't change that. She looked at me for another moment. Then she said, I need to get to a 4 o'clock, but I want to continue this conversation. I have to pick up Mia at 3:15. She nodded. Saturday, then, if you're free. Lily's already planned it. I am, I said. She turned and walked back toward the building. I watched her go for a moment, then turned and walked toward my truck, the city loud and ordinary around me. The afternoon moving forward the way afternoons do, indifferent to what had just changed inside it. If you're hooked on this story, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications so you never miss an upload. Your support means everything and helps me bring you more emotional stories like this one. Saturday came gray and cold, the kind of morning that makes the inside of any warm place feel earned. Noelle brought Lily to the park anyway because Lily had decided the cold was irrelevant, and Mia had made the same decision from our side. The girls ran ahead the moment they saw each other and resumed whatever negotiation about the winged horse's name had been left unfinished the week before. Noelle sat down beside me and wrapped both hands around her thermos. I looked into the Harlan Associates project records last night, she said. I looked at her. The Westfield overpass, she said. The load redistribution design after the 2016 inspection. The lead engineer's signature on the remediation plan was yours. It was a team effort, I said. She watched the girls. That overpass carries 40,000 vehicles a day. I know what it carries. She was quiet a moment. Then, why did you really leave? I had given her the short version before, the one that pointed at Mia and ended the question. She was asking for the longer one now. Camila and I separated when Mia was 2, I said. She was honest enough to leave before we did more damage. I respect that, even now, but it meant I had a 2-year-old and a 60-hour week and nothing holding the center. I could keep the career, or I could keep my daughter's childhood. I chose what I chose. Noelle looked at her own hands around the thermos. I made the same calculation in reverse, she said. I kept the career and hired people to fill the rest. Lily got off at the wrong bus stop because I had a presentation that could not move. She paused. I know what that says about me. It says you're doing it the way you know how, I said. Same as everyone. She looked at me. You're very fair to people who haven't been fair to you. I've had 4 years of practice at not carrying things I can't put down, I said. It's lighter. She almost smiled, and this time it arrived, brief and real, reaching her eyes before she decided whether to allow it. Across the park, both girls were running in a wide circle with their arms out, narrating loudly. The cold did not appear to register. She's happy, Noelle said, watching Lily. She said it like something that had surprised her by being true. She is, I said. I have a board meeting in 3 weeks, Noelle said after a while. A warehouse acquisition. The seller's structural reports are clean, but 2 board members are hesitant, and I can't give them a reason in language they'll trust. I need someone to walk the property before I walk into that room. She was not looking at me when she said it. I can do that, I said. She turned. Not as a favor. Consulting rate, documented the right way. I thought of Dr. Ayer's card still in my jacket pocket. All right, I said. She held out her hand, formal and deliberate. I shook it. She held it 1 beat longer than necessary before she let go. The warehouse was a 6-story textile building from 1934, solid masonry with a hybrid frame reinforced twice, once well in the 70s and once badly in 2004. I spent 4 hours there with a flashlight and the original documents Noelle had pulled from the city archive. The seller's report was not dishonest. It was incomplete in the way reports are incomplete when someone is working toward a conclusion rather than away from one. The 2004 reinforcement was adequate for the original load, but not for the residential conversion, plus the rooftop mechanical units the plan included. Nobody had run those numbers together. I wrote it up over 2 evenings at the kitchen table. I sent Noelle the report Friday night. 14 pages, every number sourced. She called it 10. This changes the acquisition price, she said. By roughly 8%, I said, if they reinforce correctly before close. Can you present it to the board? I can, I said. I walked into Meridian's conference room on a Thursday morning in a jacket I had bought the previous weekend. Mia had inspected it the night before and declared it acceptable. I had 14 printed copies and drawings marked with the calculations in question. 9 people at the table. I stood at the end and walked them through it page by page, number by number, the way my father taught me to explain a thing. Start with what is true and let the truth do the work. When I finished, one of the hesitant board members, Gerald Fitch, 30 years in commercial real estate, picked up the report and looked at page 9. This load path analysis, he said. Did you run this by hand? I did. He looked at me over his reading glasses. I haven't seen someone do that since about 2003. My father taught me before there was software for it, I said. Fitch set the report down. He looked at Noelle. Where did you find him? Noelle looked at me from the far end of the table. He found my daughter, she said. The room did not fully understand what that meant. Several people looked between us. Noelle did not explain it further. She let it sit there, plain and complete, the way a thing sits when it contains more than it shows. The acquisition closed 6 weeks later at an adjusted price. The seller pushed back for 11 days and then accepted because the documentation was too precise to argue against. Meridian retained me as a structural consultant the following week. Flexible hours, built around a school pickup at 3:15. Dr. Ayer sent me a text when she heard. It said only, good. On a Saturday in April, Noelle and Lily came to our apartment for dinner. I made rice and chicken because that is what I make well. Noelle said it was very good, and I believed her because she was not someone who said things she did not mean. After dinner, the girls fell asleep on the couch together. Lily with her head on Mia's shoulder, and Mia with one arm around Lily in the easy way of someone who has always wanted a sibling and has not said so out loud. Noelle and I sat at the kitchen table with coffee and talked for 2 hours. Her father's import business. My father's electrical work. The city outside doing what cities do in the dark. At some point, she said, I close my eyes sometimes and think about Lily standing at that corner in the rain and no one stopping. I looked at my coffee cup. Someone stopped, I said. She looked at me across the table. Yes, she said. You did. There are things you carry into a life without knowing you are carrying them. The way your father held a tool. The habit of pulling original documents. The instinct to stop when something is wrong, even when the door closes in your face. You carry them because they are yours. Mia woke at 9 and looked at Noelle and then at me and said with complete practical acceptance, Is she staying for breakfast? Noelle looked at me. I looked at my daughter. If she wants to, I said. Lily stirred beside Mia and opened her eyes and said, Yes, she wants to, without any indication of whether she had been awake for the conversation or had simply known the answer before the question was asked, which is I have found exactly how the best things tend to arrive. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.